This is 24 hours with the Nintendo Switch 2. Let's dive into it. Boy, I really don't know how to feel about this one. On one hand, it's absolutely a welcomed update to the original Switch, which is personally what I've been using since about 2017. And I gotta say, the hype for me personally was pretty real. Despite not getting a pre-order, we took our chances and stood outside our local Best Buy on launch night and were pretty surprised to find out that we actually got one. And to be honest, I think it was the midnight release that really cemented this particular launch as one of the most special, simply because midnight launches were a core part of my childhood. In any case, $617.67 later, I had my Switch 2. I think a lot of people were rightfully skeptical about pricing this time around. Many of you have seen that the also new launch price of mainstream titles like Mario Kart World are now $80. $80! The real issue with the Switch 2, in my eyes, is not enough launch titles. Granted, Mario Kart is awesome, but besides playing Cyberpunk for the third time or replaying Tears of the Kingdom now with the proper graphics and performance, what else is there to do? I've seen countless videos online showing improved performance in various older titles, but that's not what I'm really here for. It almost feels like a PC upgrade where I couldn't play a certain game before, but after building a new one, I can suddenly play them all at better settings. And while that's great, it just kind of sucked the fun out of the launch for me. I wanted new games to play, games that felt like they were made for the Switch 2. But instead, we got a $10 welcome tour, which, yes, I did buy, and yes, is very cool, but $10? Really? So as of right now, I'm a little disappointed with the game selection on the Switch 2, and hope we see some more first-party exclusives in the near future. But for now, it is nice knowing that some of my older games I maybe haven't finished will run better and look nicer on the Switch 2. Now that we got that out of the way, let's look at the console itself. Immediately, the unboxing experience felt identical to the original Switch, which for all intents and purposes is totally fine. You get the Switch itself, the two new Joy-Cons, a Joy-Con grip, the new dock, some Joy-Con skates, as I like to call them, a power adapter, and an HDMI cable. Naturally, the first thing I did was snap the Joy-Cons in, and boy, is that satisfying. Nintendo absolutely nailed the Joy-Con experience this time around. No more rails, no more putting them in backwards. Oh wait, you can now. Fun fact, you can actually attach the Joy-Cons in any which way you want. They may not work very well, or at all, but you can. And it doesn't hurt the console. I learned that one from the welcome tour. But listen to this snap. The way Nintendo managed to do this was by making the SR and SL buttons out of steel instead of plastic, which are strongly attracted to the magnets which are hidden inside the Switch itself. This makes it basically impossible to screw up, but I'm sure someone somewhere will find a way. And if you haven't noticed, the Joy-Cons are actually a bit bigger than the original, making them, well, they're still hard to hold, but they're not as hard to hold, so I guess that's a win. But don't expect them to be comfortable. They still caused my right hand to cramp almost immediately, but that's par for the course at this point. The buttons are identical to the old Switch, except now you have a new game chat button, which launches Nintendo's new online chat, and yes, it uses the same potentiometer joysticks as the older versions, meaning stick drift is almost certain to happen to at least someone within the first few weeks. Only other thing I'll say is that Nintendo absolutely missed the opportunity to launch the Mario Kart bundle with red Joy-Cons. That would have been fire. And to be honest, I was a little disappointed to see there were no optional Joy-Cons at launch, something I felt made the Switch a more personal experience in the first place. Hopefully we'll see some in the coming months, but for now, you can only get black. For the console itself, the first thing you'll notice out of the box is the size. The Switch 2 is large, like actual handheld large. I'd say it's closer to a Steam Deck than an old Switch at this point, which to me is totally fine. Actually, I prefer it this way. I'm already used to most handhelds having a 7-inch screen, so this wasn't as much of a shock to me as it might be for others. What is shocking is seeing the Switch at this size. I feel like I'm so used to the old one that when I saw this, it was like a whole new experience. The screen, unfortunately, is not OLED. And don't even get me started, because y'all already know my stance on OLED monitors for PCs. But for handhelds, I will admit that an OLED display does make more sense more often than not. So I'm a little disappointed that the follow-up to the OLED Switch is just an advanced LCD Switch. But it's not all bad. The screen is now nearly 8 inches and features a new 1080p resolution, which is the right resolution for handhelds. It supports up to 120Hz and has variable refresh rate, which are both welcomed additions, especially as the Switch continues to get more third-party AAA game support. And while it certainly doesn't look as good as the OLED, it is still a step up from the original Switch, especially since the Switch 2 comes with a new NVIDIA chip on board that it actually can run games at the native 1080p. But the resolution and screen size alone made playing the Switch 2 still feel like a new experience, just a familiar new experience. But things really start to feel new when you dock the Switch 2. This new dock now supports up to 4K at 60 FPS, which for a Switch is absolutely insane. That being said, I spent some time crushing my way through all the cups on Mario Kart, and I gotta admit, this is absolutely the best Mario Kart has ever looked. For the first time, a Nintendo console feels like a first-class citizen, and it's great. Not to say previous generations didn't have their moments, but yeah, Switch 2 really comes alive when you dock it to a 4K TV. Not to mention if you can manage to get the full 60 FPS out of it, which, at least for Mario Kart, shouldn't be too hard to achieve. Of course, this is just Mario Kart, so I'll try to taper my expectations for future titles, but for now, playing games like Tears of the Kingdom or any other Switch 2 upgraded titles look incredible while docked. And even though I opted not to get the new Pro controller, I will say the included grip was actually not bad. The slightly larger Joy-Cons made it feel much closer to a more regular sized controller, which made playing while docked a solid experience straight out of the box. Some other little upgrades I noticed were the second USB-C port on top for charging while in tabletop mode, as well as this much improved kickstand. This one almost reminds me of the kickstands on the Microsoft Surface devices. And yes, I know the Switch OLED had a similar kickstand, but I'm comparing it to the original Switch. And I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but there's actually little rubber feet on the bottom, specifically positioned for tabletop mode so the console doesn't slide around. Overall, a solid upgrade over the original. And as far as battery, I think the thing to think about here isn't sheer battery lifetime, but rather efficiency. In other words, you still get about the same battery life as the original Switch, so maybe an hour or two in games like Tears of the Kingdom or Cyberpunk, but closer to that 5 or 6 hours when playing the indie titles. All this, but now at 1080p and at much better quality. So do with that information what you will. But needless to say, you should still probably carry a charger with you no matter where you go. If you're looking for a good recommendation, I personally use this Anker laptop charger as my go-to battery bank because it has 2 built-in cables and has more than enough power to charge the Switch 2 multiple times while on the go. Alternatively, any of the Anker Prime chargers are also a good choice, even if they are total overkill in power. Having multiple ports to charge your controller or other accessories is a nice option to have when you're on the go and don't want to carry the original charger or multiple chargers. Overall, I think the thing that makes the Switch and subsequently the Switch 2 feel unique is its charm. It may not have a ton of games at launch, but where it lacks in games, it makes up for in good old-fashioned handheld fun. There's something nostalgic and comfy about the UI and the overall experience that just makes me keep coming back for more. Unfortunately, right now, it's more of the same. But hopefully some of these new exclusives will slap hard enough to keep me from switching to something else. And with that, for now, the Switch 2 is just fine in my book. I think Retro Game Core said it best that the Switch 2 is evolutionary, not necessarily revolutionary. But I want to know what you think. Is the Switch 2 overhyped, or does it just need a little more time to cook before it really makes a name for itself amongst the growing list of handhelds on the market? But that's going to be it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, and as always, make sure to subscribe to see more content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.